This is The Week on Word, a podcast featuring a roundup of the most interesting, informative, and entertaining interviews from Word Radio. You can listen to WURD Radio anytime, anywhere on wordradio.com and the Word Radio app. Give us a play and download it today. In this episode, Leigh Owens, Education and Advocacy Director at the Pennsylvania Prison Society, joined Evening WURDs with Dr. James Peterson to address the humanitarian consequences of mass incarceration. And Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, Chief Strategy and Program Officer at StoryCorps, joined EcoWord Magazine with POC to explore the expanding digital divide, particularly for older Philadelphians. But first, film critic Tim Gordon joined Wake Up With WURD with Solomon Jones to unpack the shifting media landscape driven by a high-stakes bidding war between Paramount and Netflix over Warner Brothers' Discovery.
Joining us now, Tim Gordon. He's publisher for the Film Gordon, WETA's Around Town critic, film capo of WAFCA, and host of the big show, Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. Tim, good morning.
Good morning to you, brother.
You out there in L.A., man, at the site of the crime, brother.
Sir, I'm literally in the lobby, and behind me, I'm watching the highlights. I went to bed last night. I mean, I'm not being funny. I went to bed last night while the game was going on. So I didn't find out until this morning what had occurred, man. And I just saw the plays with Jalen Hurts back there. So condolences, man, this morning. I know it's a tough morning for you guys.
It is.
But I should also say, as a Giants fan, I couldn't be more thrilled that this is happening to y'all. But again, the good people of Philadelphia, don't be mad at me. It's all sports. It's all love, man. But yes, I'm out here in LA, man, right now. Tons of Eagles fans were out here. Ran and met a couple of them yesterday. So good people in Philly, man. We like Philly.
Yeah, Philly is a great city.
Philly is a good spot.
We're going through a tough time right now, but this too shall pass. Now, one thing that's happening, though, is the media landscape looks to be about to undergo a seismic shift with Warner Brothers now on the market. Apparently, Netflix made a huge offer for it, $72 billion. Then Paramount steps in and says, we going to do a hostile takeover. What is going on, Tim?
So let me give you the update. The initial number I thought was 72.
Yep.
Was actually 83. Right? I think it ended up being something like 82.7. So you round up to about 83 billion. Just when Netflix thought that they were going to sail through, David Ellison, who runs Paramount Skydance, came up and pretty much said that, they had been trying to reach out to Warner Brothers for about the last couple of months, and Warner Brothers had not been responding to them. And they decided that instead of making the case with those guys directly, they would go directly to the shareholders. So they increased the offer of Netflix by another 25 billion, including adding 18 billion of that 25 in cash. So Netflix, I think, offered, the stock price was 27 and some change, I think 27.50. They raised the offer to $30 a share. And as I said, with a lot more cash in the deal. Yeah. Netflix, from what I understand, Solomon, was only interested in buying like the film division and some of the televisions, like the streaming platforms. I think these guys now, Paramount wants to buy everything. They want the news divisions. They want everything that's Warner Discovery right now. Now, the issue that I'm having is that, first of all, and I sent you an article that I wrote last week when all of this was announced, that Warner Brothers is kind of like the platinum brand, studio brand. It's like the longest, most influential studio that exists. If you go back and think over the last 100 years of like every major star, every major film, those came out of Warner Brothers, man. You're talking about the Bogart stuff back 100 years ago, up to the Matrix, and there's so many. Their library is just super vast, right? My issue with all of this right now is that it appears that even in a year where Warner Brothers is probably going to bring another Oscar home, because between One Battle After Another and Sinners, which are both Warner Brothers films, those are the two front runners for the Academy Awards this year. So Warner Brothers is going to get another trophy, right? Mm-hmm. But in the middle of all of this, when you're talking about it reshaping the landscape, you're absolutely correct, because my issue now is that in addition to Paramount jumping in, they've now involved the administration, which I don't like to use by name on your show. Okay. They've involved the administration in all of this now, and that, Ted Sarandis, who's the head of Netflix, had a meeting at the White House to try to figure out the regulations, because whatever happens, this whole deal is going to take about 18 months before it goes through, because of all of the different regulations, media-wise, and all of the things that have to happen. And now with Paramount coming in and making their case now, and then Ellison also being close to the administration, it leads many, Solomon, including myself, to believe that at some point, Paramount's going to end up with Warner Brothers. Yeah. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because I'm reading reports this morning about if they get it, they're going to make changes to the news division at CNN. And I'm like, this is not a dictatorship. Yeah. And I don't care what the administration thinks they're doing. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, just my aside, the people need to rise up. Yeah. Because we're watching and witnessing some things that are going on that we know the way our system is set up, none of this stuff is right. Yeah. And if you want to be a dictator, you need to take yourself to another country and be a dictator. But yeah, man, it's not good, bro. This is not a good situation if this goes through, which I think it may, Solomon. And if that's the case, we're looking at some real fundamental changes that are going to be going on in our industry, man. So,
yeah, it is. It is very interesting because, Netflix makes this offer. It seemingly comes out of the blue like, wait, Netflix is buying Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers, of course, has so many different franchises, to your point, that you made earlier, that, you could take that stuff and just make content forever. You got all of the DC comic stuff. You got the Harry Potter stuff. You got the Humphrey Bogart stuff that you talked about. You got all of this stuff that you could just go on and on and on. And Netflix had the platform that's really the growing platform. They are the most popular streaming service. They really made that business model. And so they get Warner Brothers and they're off to the races. But Paramount does have these connections to the Trump administration. They just paid Donald Trump a $16 million settlement over a 60 Minutes interview, which they could have really fought that and probably won, but they didn't. Because they wanted to do this merger with Skydance. And so the Trump administration approved this merger with Skydance. So now they already got a huge portion of the media landscape. And my question, Tim, is whatever happened to monopolies and the federal government preventing monopolies? Because if they already you got Paramount, you got Skydance, now you're trying to get Warner Brothers. They become the big bully on the block, and it looks almost like a monopoly.
Well, it is a monopoly, man. And I think part of it's so funny because I was having this conversation with a colleague a couple of days ago. And I said, we initially started off when we were younger, there was the ABC, NBC, CBS. That was it. Right. And then Fox comes along. And then we went, I think in the 90s going into the 2000s, it became about specialization. Right. Mm-hmm. So, we had to start catering to different groups. So, of course, there's the BET, the Telemundo. So there's all these different channels, AMC, all these different channels sprung up. And I think part of what we've witnessed, and I think it really came to fruition, Solomon, over the pandemic, is that everybody wanted to have their own different way of distributing their content, right? So during the pandemic, when people weren't allowed to go out, for that 2-year stretch, man, every studio was like, okay, well, we got these news divisions. Now we've got to start branching out, and we're going to create this streaming platform to get our content out in that streaming platform. And I remember, I might have even said it on your show, that I didn't think it was a sustainable model because, first of all, no one person can afford to have all these different platforms, nor does any one person have the time to watch all the content that's being developed, right? And I think what we're witnessing right now is we're going back to a situation of about 50 or 60 years ago, where you're getting down to like 4 or 5 majors that are going to control everything, which is not necessarily a good thing, right? Because if you got a situation like we were talking about now with Paramount, and Paramount is now, they have their own different news divisions, and you want to start bringing news in. I've always been taught, and we've been taught, that there needs to be a separation between church and state.
That's right.
And I can't have, an administration dictating the news and how news gets out, who gets access to report on news, what news gets. I mean, the whole thing is troubling to me in some ways. And even after this administration changes, the issue we're running into is once you establish and set certain media parameters up, it's not as easy to roll that stuff back as it will be to roll some other things back. So this to me is very troubling. And there is no good news either way, whether it ends up being Netflix or whether it ends up being Paramount. Mm-hmm. Both of these situations, neither one of them are really optimal. The Netflix one, I honestly believe at this point, Solomon, is probably the more preferable one because that would just create this huge glut of content. Yeah. But it wouldn't affect us on a media standpoint. Right. But the fact that you got the administration now in this now shows me that that's probably the way they're going to go because that's what they would prefer more so even over what Warner Brothers would prefer at this stage.
Here's what's interesting to me and what sets off alarm bells for me is the president's involvement in this. Of course, a deal like this, it has to go through federal regulators. The FCC would have to approve the deal. He's got his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, playing a role in Paramount's bid. So who's the administration going to go with? They going to go with the president's son-in-law, or they going to go with people they don't know? I mean, come on, man.
And hence, Solomon, there you go. That's what I was saying earlier when I said that I think it would be, even though I wasn't really in love with the idea of Netflix doing it, if it meant keeping that aspect out of it. But either way, they're going to be somebody from the administration is going to be in it because it's just too much money. Yeah. When you're talking about a merger of this sort, where you're talking between $80 to $110 billion, that's an amazing sum of money for a property, man. And not just a property, but like literally the largest, most influential library in motion picture history. Yeah. And I think that's the part that I don't think a lot of people really understand how much content, how influential and how important that content is. And whether it's Paramount or whether it's Netflix. Yeah. You're just the caretaker of that stuff. It's almost like being the caretaker of this country, right? It's not your country. Right. You're the caretaker of the country. Whoever gets that content is the caretaker of the largest library of stuff that's ever been created. Like some of the most important movies, TV series, shows, like it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And here's the other thing. I think the bottom line for consumers is if you have one company that has the biggest market share, they can determine the prices, and the prices go up.
The prices are going to go up. And the other part, and I think that's the other thing that I was watching something yesterday, that there's so much redundancy, right? So you figure Warner Brothers has their own division and everything is set up. Whoever buys them, whether it's Paramount or Netflix, there's all this redundancy, right? And all these different people. So people are going to lose jobs. That's number one. The debt service on either of these companies is going to be huge, right? And that debt service rolls back down to people like you and me and the folks that are listening. So instead of your Netflix, let's say if it was Netflix, instead of your Netflix being, I don't know, what's Netflix now? $20 a month, $25 a month?
Probably closer to 20.
Okay. So that 20 probably goes up closer to 30, 35, maybe 40 because you got to pay down that $82 billion. That money got to come from somewhere. Right. And then on the Paramount end, I'm not really sure exactly how that works. I know they've got Paramount Plus and I know CBS. So I'm not really sure, man, if that's made up in ad dollars, but the cost always trickles back down to the consumer one way or the other, man. So, yeah, bro, as we move along in this world, man, we start to understand and see that things cost more. We're going through consolidation. It's technology. We're dealing with AI.
Yeah.
These are very interesting times that we're living in, Solomon. And we do our best. I know on your end, you're doing your best. I'm doing my best. We try to wrap our arms around it, our minds around it, and try to figure out what direction are we going in.
Yeah.
And and when we see things that alarm the both of us, we got to speak on those things, man, and let folks know, like, hey, it's not right, man.
Yeah, we absolutely have to. That, of course, is Tim Gordon. Tim Gordon is a film critic extraordinaire, and he is host of The Big Show, Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. Tim, I want to thank you, as always, for joining us on WURD.
You're listening to The Week on Word.
Why is Word important to the community?
WURD actually literally saved me from mainstream media.
Word is a black gem.
Word is just unbelievable with the information that I have learned.
When we sit there and we think about how important Word is, that alone should make us give.
Back in the day when Churchy Woods was on, we had no idea that we needed to support the radio station like we know now.
Listeners, we gotta save it. We gotta save our Word radio.
Like, if it wasn't for black media, you wouldn't know who a music soul child is.
Visit WURDradio.com/support. This is The Week on Word, a podcast highlighting the top conversations on Word Radio. Make sure you like and follow WURD Radio on social media. Up next, Leigh Owens, Education and Advocacy Director at Pennsylvania Prison Society, joining Evening WURDs with Dr. James Peterson.
I'm very excited to welcome back to this program Mr. Leigh Owens, the Education and Advocacy Director of the Pennsylvania Prison Society, returning tonight to Evening WURDs to talk about the importance of keeping in contact with incarcerated individuals over and through the holiday season and beyond that, folks. And the Pennsylvania Prison Society's transportation program. Leigh Owens, welcome back to Evening WURDs.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. It's always great to be here to talk about these issues.
Yeah, same. I feel the same way. It is the 44th anniversary of Mumia Abu-Jamal being convicted of the murder of a Philadelphia police officer. It's an important anniversary and a complicated one for many Philadelphians. I wonder, Leigh, kind of where you weigh in on this. I mean, it's stunning to me that it's been 44 years, but it's been 44 years. Everyone listening to this program knows that Mumia Abu-Jamal has had a lot of health challenges on the latter half of his sentencing. And I think you and I have talked about some of the challenges around not just access to health care on the inside, but the fact that we do incarcerate too many senior citizens at this point. How do you weigh that out on a day like today, where a lot of people are thinking about both Mumia Abu-Jamal and Officer Faulkner?
Yeah, no, I think you said it right. I mean, anybody that's incarcerated and that's been incarcerated that long and at his age and at his poor health, that's the story of a lot of people, not just in Pennsylvania, but throughout the United States, right? And, Mumia has the story, he has the reputation, he has the notoriety, right? And, I remember when I was in high school, I went to high school for creative and performing arts in the 90s, that was my first sort of shot at activism, you know what I mean?
Free Mumia.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. That was what we were working on in the 90s, as a 14, 15-year-old, and now all these years later, him still being incarcerated, and watching his health deteriorate, like I said, we see this story every day, and it's sad. It's really sad, because all these lives are destroyed. And, thinking about the topic of conversation today, I think about his family. I think about, all of the families, the children that are impacted by mass incarceration.
The great-grandchildren.
Exactly. It becomes almost a generational thing of, even if, the children and the grandchildren aren't necessarily ever incarcerated, having that be part of your legacy and part of your line, you know what I mean? It has an impact. right? It matters and it means something. As someone who is formerly incarcerated, knowing that my father was incarcerated at one point, as a young guy, right? And so, being Black in America, that is one of the pitfalls you have to avoid, being incarcerated. Mm-hmm. And you have to really work hard to avoid it in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, like, two things. One, like, what's the logic of keeping senior citizens locked up? Like, we know from the data that senior citizens don't really commit crimes, right? Not those kinds of crimes, right? If they commit any crimes at all. I wonder, like, what's the logic of it? It's got to be expensive. It's got to be, there's a lot of cons to this. Yep. And Leigh, why couldn't there be a simple policy fix that if you're a senior citizen, you've done, I don't know, whatever a life sentence is, 20 plus more years, then you automatically, even if you want to reprimand them to a halfway house or control them somehow or make them wear an ankle bracelet, whatever you want to do, there seems to be a simple policy fix. So what's the logic of keeping senior citizens locked up? I need to understand that, like, from a crime data statistics perspective, because otherwise to me it just feels inhumane. And then secondly, aren't there, like, simple policy fixes for this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I love this question. So first, the logic behind it, I don't know that there is a lot of logic behind it, but I'll give you the political sort of atmosphere and the climate that exists around it that generally will dictate, how these things, continue to stand. And so with this, there have been several legislative measures at the state level that have sought to implement compassionate release programs for ailing senior citizens. And so, there's been a coalition that, we're involved with that are working to pass laws and bills. Right now, as it stands, you can obtain a medical release, but it's very, very hard to get. And if you get it, okay, you have to agree to not seek medical treatment once you're home. And you have to be...
Wait, Leigh. Wait. If you're granted the compassionate release for medical reasons, you have to sign something that says you're not going to seek the medical treatment that might keep you alive longer? So don't die. You can't die. You either die in prison or you can get out and just die when you get out.
That's exactly right. If you
who writes these laws? Leigh, who's writing? Who wrote this legislation?
I know. And the reason why I'm smiling is not because it's funny, but because these are the things we fight every day. And it becomes almost normal to talk about these things that are certainly abnormal. Certainly. That's
absurd. That is more than abnormal. That is absurd.
Yeah. So you can't seek treatment once you qualify, once you accept that medical release. But there has been several other legislative measures that have sought to expand that, to make it so you don't have to be, almost dead to get out. Right now, the process is so stringent that even people that are completely debilitated aren't able to get it. There's a measure in place.
Who believes that ailing elderly people are going to commit more crimes?
You know what, Dr. Peterson, if you were to survey the state legislature, I would venture to say that more people don't believe that than do. Okay. But I will say that in terms of, so first of all, we have to do a whole segment on the makeup of the state legislature.
Right. Because you got to have the political will. You got to have some political will to have the courage of your convictions. Yeah.
And you have to understand that in certain counties in Pennsylvania, that if you even look like you're going to do something positive for the carceral community, you might take a political hit. They might primary.
There's a lot of money in these prisons. There's a lot of money in warehousing, even ailing elderly people. A lot of money. There's a lot people. There are certain counties in Pennsylvania, eds, feds, and meds, and those federal prisons by a lot of people make mansions in these suburbs.
Exactly. So, that's the political side of it. And again, it often dictates the policy side, right? Because politics is supposed to be outside of the building. You know what I mean? And the policy is supposed to be inside the building, right? But the politics definitely overlaps. And so, you have all these people incarcerated that aren't a danger to society. Like you said, it's very, very expensive. It's very, very inhumane. I know a gentleman that I've had discussions about that's currently incarcerated in a state facility that can barely talk. He can't see. He can't walk. Right. So 3 of his 5 senses are gone. So he's at the mercy of other incarcerated folks to help him navigate the facility every day. He's not a danger to society, and by all logic around, safety, criminal justice, whether you're conservative or liberal, he should be able to come home and live out his last few days, even if it's at a medical treatment facility. And that's another part of the advocacy that's being worked on is making it even so that if you're at that point where we know that you're too sick, you're too old, why not just release these people into, say, hospice or again, a medical treatment facility where they're not necessarily free out and about in the streets, even though they're not a danger to society, but to quell that sort of sense of, our safety is at risk, then they're in a medical facility. So they can't hurt you.
Wow. I know. And we're here to talk about other things. And Leigh, just to be clear, when we've talked about this before, showing up for those who are impacted by the carceral system, by criminal justice system, is really key at a lot of different phases. But talk about why it's really important during the holiday season.
Yeah, no, it is, because so there's a lot of reasons why it's important all year round, but the holiday season in particular, and this time of year in particular, as you probably know, and as a lot of your viewers probably know, the cold weather, getting dark late, that in and of itself sort of creates a sort of psyche that literally will make you depressed, right? Mm-hmm. And so again, as a formerly incarcerated person, knowing that being behind those bars, I remember going days without seeing the sun, and so that in and of itself, it will shower you with anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. So there are only a few things that are going to quell that. There are only a few things that are going to make it so folks that are incarcerated, they have to deal with this 24/7, aren't going to lose their minds, right? Mm-hmm. Activities inside the facilities and being able to maintain family connections and relationships with your family during incarceration. And it's not just important for the incarcerated folks, right? It's important for the children that have incarcerated parents. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't be punished because their parent is incarcerated, because we know that sort of having a parent that's incarcerated and not being able to maintain those connections during incarceration, what it does is so if you deal with it, right, if you allow folks to see their families, you're going to lower recidivism, is what I'm trying to say. You're going to lower recidivism. Simple.
Because it's easier for them to acclimate once they get back outside. They've maintained relationships. They're going to get more support, more help. It's 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1
= 2. And you're not traumatizing the children, right? And you're not leading them into incarceration, by traumatizing them more than they're already going to be traumatized, right? And so, it's like a double-edged sword, eat on both ways for good and for bad, right? So this time of year, it's all just sort of amplified. All of that anxiety, all of that sort of sadness, it's just amplified this time of year because, you know how it is. You'll go all year without seeing your family, but Thanksgiving and Christmas, you better show up.
Yeah. I want to talk about the transportation piece of this, Leigh, but before that, are there other legal ways to communicate? Can you use email? Can you write letters? What are the ways, you all have an incredible program where you're actually just putting people on buses and taking them there. But what are the other ways, the calls? What are the other ways for people to reach out to those who are incarcerated?
Definitely phone calls, visits, in-person visits,
which are not cheap. But we should be clear that phone calls are not cheap. The phone companies jack up the prices to call those on the inside.
And so we've been working on a legislative measure to make phone calls free. Last year, we worked on advocacy around lowering the rates through the FCC, and we did win. So nationally, phone rates have decreased due to that advocacy, but there's still a cost associated with it that a person making $0.25 a day just simply cannot afford. But there's also the tablets, that that a lot of the facilities have, where in some cases you can send emails. In some rare cases, I've seen folks on social media. I'm not necessarily sure how that works, but I have seen it happen. But I know that the tablets are supposed to be sort of the technological component that, you can, read books on there. You can do video visits. And I will say that one of the things we've been working on is making in-person visits more of a regular thing. Due to the COVID pandemic in 2020, a lot of the visiting rooms were closed. So they actually switched over to video only visit. So, I believe some facilities have allowed for in-person visits. Obviously the ones that we're taking folks to, but some facilities still are relying more so on video visits, which are fine, but they don't replace in-person visits.
They should not. It's not the same, obviously, for family members and their loved ones who are incarcerated. You all have had this transportation program up and running for a little while. I know we talked about it before on these airways, but talk about it now because it's important as folks are thinking about, again, you and I have talked about this, but a lot of these facilities, especially the ones that you all serve through your transportation program, are not very close to the city. And so it's prohibitive for some family members to see their loved ones who are incarcerated. Talk about the facilities that you all offer the transportation program to, and kind of what's the scheduling and process for folks who want to access this support. Absolutely.
So we go to currently 4 facilities, and that's going to be SCI Muncie, SCI Frackville, SCI Mahoney, and SCI Benner. And they are far, that's part of why we do this, because it is a financial impediment to folks, and not just financial. Some elderly folks just can't drive across the state.
It's like 4 or 5 hours. 4 or 5 hours each way.
And even if you have the money to do it and you can't drive, there's not necessarily a Greyhound bus or a train that's going to take you there, right? Because it's in the middle of nowhere, a lot of these facilities. So the bus program, it's very low cost. I believe it's $5 per person, and you meet in central Philadelphia, and we take you and we drop you off, right? And so we're starting at those 4 facilities, but we're looking at expanding to other facilities, and also starting a bus program in the western part of the state that will bring incarcerated families and friends of individuals that are closer to us from the western part here for the same reason. So, that's in the works. But for right now, it's just those 4 facilities. And if folks are interested, they can go to www.prisonsociety.org, and they can sign up online. And I think that would probably be the best and easiest way to sign up for the buses.
Are they usually on the weekends? Are they obviously they're return trips? So you bring them back as well. Are they on the weekends? Like how does it work? Because we only have 1 or 2 more weekends between now and Christmas.
Right. Yep. So the next bus, I believe, is December 19th, and that one will be going to SCI Muncie. I believe the 19th is a Friday. After that, we'll be going to SCI Frackville on December 29th, which I believe is a Monday. Yes, it is a Monday. And then we'll be heading over to SCI Mahoney also on December 29th. So we'll be having 2 buses going out that day. After that, our next bus isn't until April, and that's going to SCI Benner April 6th. So we'll be taking a few months off. But I would say, the trips to Benner and Frackville and those December trips, there's still an opportunity to sign up. So I would encourage folks to do that. But if you miss it, then definitely sign up early for the April ones, because so far, all of our buses have sold out.
Wow.
The demand is there. The demand is there.
Wow. So really, I mean, we want to get the information out there, but the December 19th and December 29th buses are full as of right now. We should let folks know that. But the April 6th bus is available for booking now.
That's correct.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Leigh Owens, Education Advocacy Director, Pennsylvania Prison Society. Leigh, every time you're on here, I learn a little bit more about this issue that our listeners care so much about, and that's so important for our community. Keep doing the great work you're doing at the Pennsylvania Prison Society, and keep coming back.
The 19th is full. I'm sorry, the 19th is not full.
Okay. The 29th is, but not the 19th.
That's right. Yeah.
And the 19th bus is going where, Leigh? Which one?
The 19th bus is going to, I believe Muncie, but I'm gonna have to double check that. I believe it's Muncie.
But they can go to the Pennsylvania Prison Society website and get all the information. But there are a few seats still available on the one for December 19th.
That's correct. And that is going to Muncie. Yes.
That is good news. Leigh Owens, Education Advocacy Director of the Pennsylvania Prison Society. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule, good brother, to come on here and talk about the work and keep up the good work that you're doing there at Pennsylvania Prison Society. We appreciate it.
This is the Week on Word.
Why is Word important to the community?
Thank you for asking.
Let me count the ways.
And it's one of the most important radio stations in the country.
Word has always been a platform for Black people in Philadelphia. We're one of the only Black-owned talk radio stations in the country. We're one of 4 in the nation.
You know, a lot of what's going on in the world today, I think, is a result of people feeling like they don't have a voice.
Without Word, we wouldn't have such educated, loving, caring people of color who really are interested in what's going on in neighborhoods around the city.
Word creates such a sense of community in the Black community here in Philadelphia.
It amplifies the voices that are mostly marginalized.
It allows you to speak and be heard and to create your own narrative, your own story. It's a place where we can share our thoughts, our ideas, our dreams. You control who and what you say about yourself.
Every community needs a hub.
We are giving voice to the community, and without the community, there will be no word. We are one and the same, and it is not a game. WURD.
You're checking out the Week on Word podcast. To learn more about our programming, visit wordradio.com. Our last conversation for this episode features Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, Chief Strategy and Program Officer at StoryCorps, joining EcoWord Magazine with POC.
I'm excited about our next guest. I'm excited because of the conversation that we're about to have. You know, I like to pick his brain when it comes down to AI and artificial intelligence, everything that's going on around it, you know, when it comes down to just the industry of AI and how people are incorporating it. But first and foremost, like, how are we actually bringing it into our communities, such as Black and Brown communities, and making sure that people truly understand how to properly use it, especially with so much digital divide going on within our community. So I want to bring on our special guest to talk a little bit about this. And his name is, you know, in these streets, he goes by Flood the Drummer, but Christopher Flood the Drummer Norris, who is the Chief Strategy and Program Officer at StoryCorps. Good morning, Flood. Welcome to WRD.
Yep to the yep. Good morning.
Good morning.
Friday.
Happy Friday. Thank you for making time, man. Please introduce yourself. I know the people already know who you are, but please introduce yourself and let them know who they listen to.
Sure. Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, former CEO of Textbook Online, former managing editor for community engagement at WHOY, current chief strategy and program innovation officer at StoryCorps.
I love that. I love that breakdown. And, you know, Flood, when it comes down to, you know, just the world of AI, I feel like it is bum rushing our folks, right? You know, whether we want it in our lives or not, I feel like some folks are just like, it's here and I just got to figure it out. But I just, you know, it's timid. It's timid to them, you know, it's scaring them just a little bit. So I really wanted to jump in and have this conversation. And I wanted to just bring it back just a little bit, right? Just the idea of like almost 5 years ago, we were made aware that Black and Brown Americans across the nation, across the country, did not even have access to Wi-Fi, did not even have access to, you know, the World Wide Web. And now 5 years later, we're now talking about artificial intelligence. Let me know your thoughts on that.
I mean, it's broad, right? I mean, I think AI is a spectrum. And so like one of the things I hope that we're able to do today is talk about what AI really means and who's using it. Because I think that the perception is that when you talk about things like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, is that Black folks have this kind of inherent hesitance to it, that they're not using it and that they're falling behind. The truth is Black Americans are actually leading adoption to large language models over their white counterparts, despite the hesitance that they have towards it. I think what the real issue is when it comes to Black folks is less about the digital divide. It's more about the wealth divide. When it comes to AI, we create, so we don't code. We're building brilliance on borrowed tools. But if the lender revokes access, so does the construction, like the construction halts, and then so do our gains. So I always talk about AI in this moment is like the industrial revolution. And I think it's creating a political urgency for Black America that hasn't been seen since the civil rights movement. So when we think about like what was important in 1965 is we were trying to win access to the ballot. And now we need to try to find pathways to the billions, because what we don't want to talk about, and what's really true, is that this industrial revolution could create the conditions where even reparations are beyond repair. And so there's two pathways forward for Black America. There's how do you fortify the creator class? So the people who are building brilliance on top of the infrastructure we don't own, how do you fortify and monetize that class and then transition them into the owners and operators of these technology? And then how do you defend and protect and upskill the Black working class who are over-indexed in 4 of the top 5 jobs that are going to be automated? So we have a lot of work to do. And the scary thing is that our political class has no idea what they're doing when it comes to AI. And I'm talking about our political class more broadly, but then also specifically our Black leaders. We're not having this kind of conversation.
I agree with you on some of the things that you said. And one thing that I do want to just back up on what you said, too, is just that you said a lot of Black Americans are adapting to the, innovation of what AI is bringing to the table. But I think that's just one demographic of folks, right? I think that's just one demographic of Black folks who are in a working class society, a blue collar, white collar. But then when you think about the Black folks who are working minimum wage jobs, with a lot of Black folks are working minimum wage jobs, where these jobs are going to get, taken because of innovation of AI and what AI is doing. I think that is where I'm trying to defend right now, is because I see majority of our working class folks who are working these 9 to 5, low paying jobs are going to be the ones that are going to really miss out on this, exciting new wave that you just said, as far as creators being able to, capitalize off of their creations and off their brilliance. But at the same time, I don't think that's going to trickle down to all Black folks and all Black Americans.
Oh, it's not, which is why I said the pathway forward is twofold, right? So I'm speaking to what you're speaking to. I'm saying that there's a segment of Black folks, particularly who are younger, that are creating a derivative economy. So there's this technology economy where we're going to see more trillionaires in the coming years than have ever existed, right? They've never existed before. Elon's going to be the first trillionaire, and then you're going to see a lot more that comes behind them. Black folks are creating a creative derivative economy on top of these platforms, right? As we've always done. It's right in line with how we've used social media. We over-index in the consumption and the creation of things on social media, but we're under-indexed in the actual creation of the technology. So on one hand, you have Black Americans who are above the curve when it comes to adopting to large language models like ChatGPT and Sora and other things like that. And then you have, on the other hand, the Black working class who are in service jobs like cashiers or banking or other things where those jobs are at a higher risk of automation than other white collar jobs like management. So it's not like a one size fits all. We have to do two things. We have to fortify and monetize the creator class, and then you have to defend and protect the working class, which means you can't just complain that the artificial intelligence is here. You have to actually put policies in place that upskills them. So how do you expand broadband? How do you create more training AI opportunities in HBCUs and in communities? How do you create and unlock more?
Without killing our pockets, though, Chris, I don't want to pay an additional $50 in my utility bill in order for these things to work. And I think that that's where a lot of other people.
But that's a conversation you got to have with City Hall.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. But I think that as we're talking about policies, I think those things should also be implemented as well. Like when we think about how we are creating more energy, right? We're putting more data centers everywhere because we want these things to work. We want the open AIs to do what it's supposed to do. But in order for it to do that, it needs the energy, it needs the water, it needs the sunlight, all of these things. So it makes sense. But at the same time, we're killing our planet by doing so. And our the cost efficiency is not there as well, trying to innovate and get these things done. But let me ask you this quick question about just older residents, and especially because a lot of WURD listeners are a little bit older. And I wanted to just ask that as we're having this conversation, because I want to make it relatable to them too, is like, what is one of the biggest tech barriers you see for, our older residents right now, just particularly in the city of Philadelphia?
I think it's comprehension. I don't think it's access, because if older or younger Philadelphians are trying to engage with some of the AI tools, Black folks are over-indexing in smartphone access, which allows people to create and use. It's the broadband access that's going to allow you to do a much deeper dive in AI expansion and coding, right? You can't really do that from the phones. So if you're a 65-year-old Black Philadelphian in Mount Airy, the real issue is you're not quite sure what a large language model is. You have an inherent distrust of emerging technologies. You also are thinking about the bigger picture of like, you're thinking about surveillance. You're thinking about privacy. You're thinking about historical issues of AI, facial recognition and stereotypical outputs in our large language models. Because, and this goes back to the issue, AI is being created by young and middle-aged white men. And so the data sets and the perspectives is being trained on is from a white dominant culture perspective. And so when you ask certain questions about Black language or Black culture, it can come out very stereotypical. The images can come out very stereotypical. There's some even issues thinking about how AI is used in healthcare and how it misdiagnoses cancer in Black skin because it doesn't know how to like adopt those things, right? But then again, this is a spectrum. So we could talk about are Black Americans adopting to large language models in a way that increases productivity and creativity, and makes them more viable in the economy. We could talk about whether or not Black Americans are in these jobs that are higher rates of risk of displacement. And then how do you mitigate that so that you don't create a permanent underclass and a permanent consumer class? Or we could talk about the inherent distrust that Black Americans have to technology, particularly in the context of security and privacy.
I definitely agree with you on the trust factor. And this actually makes me want to ask this next question is because, even when it comes down to how we are getting public service announcements out there, how we're getting alerts out there to people, right? I feel like AI and technology plays a huge part in that. Like how we get emergency alerts, if there's something happening, you have an iPhone, you get emergency alert on your phone. And there's some people who still don't trust those things. When the air quality is bad, you will get an alert on your phone when it's heat, a heat wave is coming through. You will get an alert. And these are still AI technologies that are being used in order for these alerts to happen, right? So I know you say that it's not about access, right? It's about comprehension. And I do agree with that somewhat, but I also think access plays a huge part in it, right? Because like you said, when it comes down to bandwidth, when it comes down to Wi-Fi, when it comes down to the access of having the technology at the palm of your fingertips, some people are not getting these alerts because they don't have the access to the technology that is allowing them to know what's happening in their neighborhoods. And that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you is like, how can we change the narrative, if so, right, around the distrusting factor of using AI and technology to actually report some of these things, especially because us as journalists, we are putting these things out in a digital way for people to be able to access it faster. But is that something we want to do?
I don't actually think that's true. Okay. I think again, you can use AI on a phone. You can't build AI on a phone. Okay. So if we're talking about simply access to, large language models or access to information, whether it's Google or Claude or Gemini or Perplexity or ChatGPT or Notebook, you can do these things on the phone. And so I don't think the issue is broadband when it comes to accessing it. I think broadband becomes an issue when we talk about creating it. So if we're talking about people needing to get information, most of the information nowadays is you get an alert to your phone. And most people have an iPhone or at least a phone that is internet connected. And so I think the bigger issue is about broadband. And I think those are two different issues.
Well, I was talking about, because you ended the last piece about trust. And I'm saying that we have seen AI utilize these alert methods to put out a message. And some of them have been faulty. Some of them have been scams. Some of them have been like test runs. And then people are getting these messages or these alerts on their phone. And now they're having that issue whether they should trust them or not. And I think that that's where the AI the complexity comes in a little bit about how do we have that trusting, ability.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I don't think it's really about AI though, right? I think it's more about I mean, the same could be said. I mean, how many spam calls do you get a day? How many text messages do you get a day saying you got approved for a $250,000 line of credit that you can apply for?
But these open AI systems are being used to do these things. It's not a human
factor.
But this stuff also existed. At one point it was, but now it's not.
But it also existed right before AI.
Yeah.
So again, it's less about the tool itself and more about the bad actors who are using it. I think we talked about this when you and I were on Penn's campus a couple of weeks ago for the panel. It's like, if I give you a hammer to build a home, you could take that hammer and hurt someone with it, or you could take that hammer and drop it on your own foot and create harm in both contexts. But the tool itself isn't harmful. It's the people who are misusing it. So it's like one way you talk about the narrative is that you don't make it about the tool itself. You make it about the people who are using the tool, their intentions, creating more media literacy and understanding of when things come in, that you don't just click on it. If you got an email from an email address you don't recognize, you don't click on it. If you got a text message saying, hey, blah, 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 text other people, ask if they got it, Google search and see if it that kind of thing has to be inherent. So the way you mitigate that is by creating more literacy and double checking anything that you see.
And Flood, we got to go to a quick commercial break. Stay with me, please. We got about 10 minutes left. We got to go to a quick commercial break. Right after this quick commercial break, we'll be talking a little bit more about this, artificial intelligence industry, but also talking about how we are incorporating it into our communities here in the city of Philadelphia and beyond. Stay locked. Eco word, eco word, eco word. Yep to the yep. You already know what time it is, man. It's your girl, POC. We back live, 900 AM WURD 96.1 Word Radio. Before we jump back into our conversations, I need you to mark your calendars. Mark your calendars is going down Saturday, December 13th. We are having the 9th annual empowerment experience at Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church, and we want you all to be invited. Inspired by Kwanzaa principles of corporate economics through Emoja, this culture-filled, family-friendly holiday marketplace will take place again Saturday, December 13th from 11 to 4 p.m. We want you to definitely be in the building. You can find more information on the website at wordradio.com/empowerment. This is also brought to you by Keystone First, Visit Philly, Comcast, Pico, Philadelphia Parking Authority, PPA, that's what they were trying to say, Philadelphia College of Medicine and Wellness Initiatives, and Temple Health. Thank you all so much for making this happen. But I want to jump right back into our special guest this morning. Again, we got Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, on the line with us. And we're talking a little bit about the digital divide as well as the artificial intelligence industry and how we are actually incorporating that into our communities, just in Philadelphia and beyond, right? And Flood, I just want to talk to you about it. This week, we just started the Waymo cars, right? People are seeing cars drive down the street with no one in them, right? And if you talk to the people, they ain't asked for it, man. What's your thoughts on this?
Oh, StoryCorps had a gala in San Francisco last month. And San Francisco is where a lot of the AI boom is happening, right? Silicon Valley. So it's a cultural thing, because when I was in San Francisco, everybody rides in Waymo. Nobody thinks twice about it. And for me, it was like, what? And so my team, we took the team out for dinner, and later after dinner, they called a Waymo. And I said, you guys have fun. I'm going to walk back to the hotel. So like as much as I'm like into it, and I'm an early adopter of a lot of the large language models and I use them, I'm not quite ready to sit in a car that has no driver. I think that's a little bit too dystopian, but I also acknowledge, right, that my hesitancy and my distrust of certain types of technology doesn't make the industry move any slower. Autonomous vehicles are where we're going. DoorDash drivers, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, they're going to be displaced very soon. And we may think like, oh, Waymo,
that's a whole industry within itself.
It's a whole cottage industry.
Yes.
It's going to be displaced. And you're going to see like DoorDash.
So that means taxi drivers, they're really gone.
Oh, taxi drivers had the same reaction to Uber as Uber drivers are having to Waymo. Yeah. And so, and think about it. When I'm old enough to remember, at least at the tail end, how the news business reacted to digital,
Yeah.
It was a fad. We don't need to build a website. We don't need app. We can still continue to print our papers, right? The reality is the technology is going to keep advancing because that's what technology does. That's what human beings do. And there has always been a contingent of people who will push back against it. As you going all the way back to the Luddites who broke into the factories to damage the machines that threatened to take their factory jobs, right? This is not a new narrative. This is not a new thing, but we are in the middle of an industrial revolution. And if we don't think about it as a revolutionary thing that's happening to us, then we're just going to continue to think about these things as isolated incidents, a large language model.
And I think
here.
we need to also find a different word. You know, industrial revolution it just doesn't fit right with me right now because
that's what it is.
It's so much. It's technology, though. It's technology.
Right, technology is an industry.
Yeah,
like,
I know,
we're talking about industry.
When I think about industrial revolution, I think about things that are tangible.
Right, you're thinking about it literal. You're thinking about machines. But we're not talking about machines. We're talking about robots. We're talking about self-driving cars.
We are.
We're talking about glasses that can take cameras and record video.
And
we're talking about wearable tech.
We're also talking about data centers that are sitting in the
We're talking about data centers. So it is a revolution of industry. Industrial revolution just means revolutionizing industry.
So I guess the tangible thing will be the servers.
No, the tangible thing is the displacement of work.
Yeah, okay.
The people who are going to lose jobs. The tangible thing is the Waymo driving in Philadelphia now. Mm-hmm. The tangible things are the data centers. Yeah. The tangible things are the glasses from Ray-Ban that you can record a video on.
Yeah, I'm scared of those, by the way, too. But let me ask you this last question. A little bit, you know, because sometimes you get comfortable. You're just having conversation. Next, you know, you just see this white light flashing from somebody's glasses. Like, come on, bro.
I think it depends on the context. If I was still a journalist and a journalist proper and covering protests, I would certainly wear those glasses and show it. Yeah.
Yes, but people are wearing them for fashion. People are not wearing them to, discover something along their hike. Well,
I think most people are using it for content creation.
And that is the privacy thing that we're talking about,
Yes, because you don't know when it's on. You don't know if you're having.
And shout out to Ray-Ban for having the white light. But then there's some people who are making mock-ups that don't have the white light that is flashing. So I think that that's going to be an issue when it comes down to privacy. But let me ask you this question because it kind of goes into that. It says, my question is, what does equal and fair digital connection as far as the access to when it comes down to artificial intelligence, it comes down to, what am I trying to say? Wi-Fi and the internet. What does that look like for an everyday Philadelphian as far as equal, fair, and the digital connection?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you're trying to ask. Are you asking how do we create equality among people who can access technology?
Yeah. So what does equality look like? Well, equity and fair equity look like when it comes down to an everyday Philadelphia, when it comes down to that digital space, and then also just the access to internet and the bandwidth that we're talking about.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I think it's something about it's a market thing, right? It's people invest in broadband where they think they're going to get a lot of return. And again, you can use AI on the phone. The issue is not using it. It's about building it because the creation of it requires bandwidth. It requires broadband. It requires storage. It requires computing power. But it
also requires money, right? So I get it because you said it before when you said that, you can use it on the phone, but some people have the 2.0 version. Some people have the unlimited package, and some people literally just
mean of like the different models?
Yeah, so that's what I mean when I say like equitable, and fair, because I don't have $20 to pay a monthly fee to any of these services, AI services, in order to be able to get everything that it offers. I just have a phone, right? And I can go to Google.
You're not going to like my answer.
I can't even on my phone, the type of phone I have, I can't even really download the app. I have to go to the website version of it, So I'm not getting the same.
You're a big time radio host. Get you a new phone.
I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about my listeners and supporters. I'm trying to defend them right now.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to like my answer. You don't. You don't create fairness in the marketplace.
And that's the problem. And
it's not a problem.
And that's why I use the word divide between Black and brown communities.
It's not, but that's not an issue. But I think you're conflating things. I think what we're talking about is there's no difference. It would be like saying, how do we create fairness in people who can afford Netflix without the ads versus people who can only afford the tier 1 when they got to watch commercials? I mean, there's always going to be premium. Like, it's like, how do we make it equitable for everybody to ride first class on an airplane? Right?
But
like, you can't.
That's an option. That's a luxury option to say,
hey, I want to. AI.
No, it's a part of our world now. Artificial intelligence is a part of our daily life. I can't even go in a grocery store without seeing AI being used at this point. I can't walk into an educational building without seeing AI being used at this point. For example, let's say my teacher gives me a homework assignment, right? And there's 3 kids in the classroom who has the ability to go to the further or the high up versions of ChatGPT or Gemini, right? But I'm stuck with my Wi-Fi that essential skills Wi-Fi that I'm receiving from Xfinity, because I'm a low income representative. And when I do that, my bandwidth is still not as strong as the person who has Wi-Fi that they're paying for on a regular price. And then now it's me trying to do the same homework assignment that they have, and we don't have the same equitable options to do that. And I just think that is not fair.
That could be the same case of saying, like, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when we had those Texas Instrument calculators come out that were like the bomb calculators. And they were like $100. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then everybody else had like a calculator from Staples, and only certain people had access to those calculators. It was because certain households could afford it. It's the same way, like, you know, there are certain households who can afford tutors. There will be people in your class who will get help with their homework who you won't have a tutor. They would. They may have a 2-parent household where someone is an expert in that.
So you're saying what Laura Marion is receiving in their education because they have the taxes to pay for these artificial inputs into their education, and then we have people in Southwest Philadelphia who doesn't have the tax bracket to pay for the artificial inputs into their education system. It's okay.
I think you're assuming that people in Lower Marion broadly have adopted AI in their education system.
That was just an example.
No, I know what you're saying. No, I hear what you're saying.
Brackets.
But in tax brackets, it's a market thing, right? The market has to fix that. There's no policy that can go in and say, how do we make sure everybody can afford the platinum premium tiers of a product in the market? Like that's just so much government overreach that would require to do that would make me uncomfortable. What we want to talk about is how do we create, where the policy comes in, is how do we create and close the wealth gap? So if a family wants to buy that premium gap, it doesn't put them in the hole, and they can be competitive in the marketplace and give their children access to the same productivity tools that their white counterparts have. So the issue is not access to the tools themselves. It's about, again, how do we close that $1.3 trillion gap in wealth that exists? Now, people will talk about reparations. And I said earlier, we are an industrial revolution that's moving so fast it can make reparations, it can. Why do you think?
Because a lot of people will argue that one down for sure. And
argue it down in what way?
Because that's not. I mean, this is not for an eco-word conversation. We can talk about that later.
Right. But if reparations says we're going to add a 1.3 to 2 trillion to 3 trillion to close the wealth gap, but then AI advances the wealth gap and the volume of it and creates more trillionaires, then that policy solution becomes insufficient because the wealth gap will widen because more people are getting rich at the top of the creator class, or I should say in the technological operating class. And then the derivative economy that comes from that are the black people in particular who are using the tools that the white class creates to create things on social media. So we have to figure out if the issue is that black Americans and brown Americans need to be able to afford the same tools that their white counterparts have, then that's an issue of wealth gap and market conditions and fair, think about wage. But it's not about, you can't mandate that people have access to these tools because it's a private company. It's a luxury. You don't have to have ChatGPT. You don't have to have Gemini. You don't have to have Sora the way you have to have electricity and water.
But in reality, coming down the pipeline, especially by the time we get to 2030, you are. Just like at one point, you didn't have to have Wi-Fi. You didn't have to have internet, but you do. Just like we seen 5 years ago, the entire world shut down. And when the world shut down, we've seen how many people were lacking just the simple necessity. Well, what we thought was a necessity was Wi-Fi.
If Wi-Fi should be a public good, I agree with you. Access to the internet in the world that we exist should be a public good. But that's different than saying access to every tool within that economy is also a public good. Not like, access to the internet, public good. Access to the
but once it becomes something that is a part of the public, like every day and a part of society and how it's being incorporated into the public's world, I think it should be something that's accessible to all. Like if you are pushing this,
everybody can access ChatGPT right now. Yes,
we can, and I think that this is something where we're going to disagree because
why are we disagreeing?
Because yes, you can access it, right? But I don't have the same access that you have, and I think that that's where the divide is going to continue to grow.
If you wanted, let me ask you, if you wanted to pay $20 a month to get the premium version, could you?
No, because I would rather put food on my table. I would rather pay for
so you are making a priority choice, right? But you could. Nothing's prohibiting from you, but you're ranking in priority, your hierarchy of needs. You don't need that as much as you need other things. But my ability to say I need that more than I need a car, or I need that more than I need a subscription to Amazon Prime, is because I'm placing it higher on my priority. And
that goes back to the conversation I was saying earlier when we first started, that it's about demographic. It only appeals to a certain demographic who actually has the financial means and capitals or the leisure expenses where they can actually push that. Because if we have a family of three, who you have a high school junior, middle school 8th grader, and then you have a 4th grader in elementary school, that is actually a necessity that you need. Being able to help them with their homework, be able to comprehend it, the words that you use yourself. Some of the things that are happening in these schools, some of the parents don't even understand. So being able to have the proper tools and the necessities that you need to educate your students at home is important.
But as somebody who uses AI regularly, POC, I will tell you that the Grok on X, Gemini, the basic version of ChatGPT are all sufficient enough to help someone who wants to do their homework. The premium version is a luxury.
It is.
And so it should not be something that we give to everybody.
I'm going to drop the mic like that, Chris. I disagree. You know what I mean? But I love these type of conversations with you every time we have one of these conversations. And shout out to PABJ as well. We actually started this conversation at the Media Access Day that was back in November. And the conversation was surrounded about artificial intelligence in the industry and how we are incorporating this within journalism. But now I wanted to have this conversation on how we are incorporating this within our community. So again, Chris, I truly appreciate you. Flood, thank you so much for always taking time.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. If you want to shout yourself out, how can people find you? Show more.
Sure. I'm on social media at Flood the Drummer, and also help shepherding a brand new initiative from StoryCorps called Brightness and Black, where we're telling the joyous and bold cultural stories while countering harmful narratives about the Black experience. So shout out to the Jordan Family Foundation and the Jordan brand and the Hartford Foundation for their continued support of that initiative. And if you're interested in watching our content, it's brightnessandblack.org.
I love that you all collaborated with local filmmakers. That made me excited. Thank you guys so much for doing it, for the city of Philadelphia.
Of course. Yep.
You're checking out The Week on Word. Stay connected on the go with the WURD Radio app. Search WURD Radio in your app store. Stream every show with increased clarity. Easily access WURD TV, EcoWord, and Livelihood. Remember, Black Media Matters. Get the WURD Radio app today. Available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Week on Word. Let's stay connected. Sign up for our newsletter and listen to us online at wordradio.com and on the WURD Radio app.